Product Book Club is completely free for all participants and authors. It's running by enthusiasts, and we have great plans how to develop it further. If you like what we are doing, you can support us on Patreon or using one-off donations. Check out more details on productbookclub.com/support or in the details section under this video. Thanks!
Welcome everyone. My name is Carlos and this is productbookclub.com, where we meet once a month to discuss a book related to product management. And today we're going to discuss Product Direction by Nacho Bassino, and we have Nacho with us on the call as well to discuss. So thanks Nacho for joining us. As mentioned, we have I send a link on the chat now. There you can also add the questions and also vote for the ones. So then we also make sure that we allocate to the ones that the audience finds more relevant. You will anyways be able to make your question. And maybe we can start with Nacho. You can give an introduction about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thanks for having me, and super excited. As I was saying before, I've been following these conversations, are super interesting. I really hope that we can make actually a conversation, not necessarily a Q&A. And for myself, I started as a software engineer many years ago. I don't want to say how many, but I also many years ago I moved to product. I started as a product manager in the gaming industry. Then I jumped to the travel industry. I grew to the leadership roles. My last role in the travel industry was as chief product officer of Best Day, which is the largest travel company in Mexico. But then I decided to move to Europe. So I'm now based on Barcelona, Spain, working for Xing as director of product for the shops marketplace. And for those of you who don't know the product, Xing is a professional social network, similar to LinkedIn, but more based on the German-speaking markets.
Nice. Yeah, indeed. I've heard it's quite popular in Germany, I think, right?
Yeah. It's exactly. It's good competitor there.
Nice, cool. Well, I read the book. I finished it. I think this week. I really liked it. I posted on LinkedIn about it. Right, that I think there are other books, of course, about strategy and OKRs. But what I really enjoyed from this one was that it's very pragmatic, and then of course, all the examples, right? So you not only learn why you should have a strategy in place and so on, but you also it became quite easy, I think, quite actionable as well, at least from my side. Maybe Nacho, you can tell us a bit more as well how you came to the motivation for writing the book.
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, I'm still trying to answer it, but to be really concrete, I think that you nailed it, and I'm really happy that the book came across as pragmatic, because that's actually was my key concern. That as a product leader for many years, I've been let's say a strategy practitioner, and I keep reading books and finding new material that was good in the theory, but it was very hard to make it actionable. And there are actually very, very good books that I totally recommend to read, like, for instance, Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, that is actionable, but it's still at a higher level, I would say, than my book. And my book was trying to kind of solve this path from having this understanding of how a strategy is done to actually make it visible and connecting that to everyday actions. So it's highly structured book. Probably maybe that's due to my software engineering background, but I really like to understand how we do things, because I think that understanding them is a way to actually improve them. So I try to describe some very practical approach to do it, and a very structured approach to it, even though I know that in the practice that will change a lot, and people will implement it differently. I think it's a good starting point, especially for people who is probably new in the leadership role or trying to find this one way to do it. And then that, of course, as product people, we can adapt and modify to our own circumstances. Of course, strategy in particular is a very broad topic that changes a lot from company or product to other ones. So I guess that my key point was making sure that we can translate all these concepts of strategy into some actionable steps that we can take in our everyday life.
Yeah, nice. And indeed, right, like you mentioned, I think strategy being so different in all companies. That's the thing also, that the nice part was that on the book you compare different ones, right, or give extra references. So it's also nice, sort of like a starting point or entry point to then read, okay, then I will expand further if I go read this other book and so on, right? Very nice. I will check the question from the one with more votes now is from myself. Maybe I will start with that one. Because I think that the other part that I also really like from the book with these examples was that I also found that that the guidance was also even very detailed sometimes with like the wording, for example, right, or the communication that especially for new PMs or like starting, even those questions sometimes are valid, right? Like, okay, but how should I actually write it, right? And I think the examples, you also have a couple of advice or tips on how to structure and write it. Found it very, very good. But I also had a question maybe related to OKRs that, of course, right, I think the example you give is like increase the logins or the conversion rate in this much percent. But at least like a personal challenge I found whenever I would, move to a new team, or maybe the team starts focusing on something else, is also how do you put that first number on the OKR, right? Like, is 10% too much? Is that even possible, right? Or so I don't know if you have more tips, or maybe what you have seen, or maybe also others from the call, how they have overcome that challenge.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's probably a problem that we all share. So I can tell how I approach it, but for sure there are other bad experiences. So I can give a start. I think there are two answers or two ways to tackle that question. On the first place, if you are building your OKRs based on a strategy, that strategy, or while building that strategy, you should have done some sort of insights mapping or insights investigation and discovery. So in that sense, when you are saying, hey, I'm having a problem in this space, or I'm having an opportunity of solving a user need in this space, you probably try to understand, because if you are focusing on that one, you try to understand, okay, how big this is, how much of an impact this can make. And of course, assumptions can be super big, but at least you are deciding on that one because of some reasoning behind it to choose that path. So even though the OKR may not be super specific on metrics that you may have done some market research that led to some conclusions on why taking this one. So let's say the statistical assumption can be the basis for your OKR, even though it's an assumption, even though you are not very specific. And the second part of the answer, or maybe more related to how I did it, actually. So I started OKRs in two companies, so from scratch, so from 0 to 1. And this is what happened to us, but I have read that many companies have been the same. You take like 3 or 4 iterations, so almost a year, until you get something valuable out of OKRs. So I would say that if you are starting with that, it's super fair to be mistaken or be wrong in the first numbers you picked. What I will actually, the way you frame it, I think you're already starting in a good place, because many companies, how they start with putting the past projects that they were making into like this yes or no OKRs, or deliver this stuff. So if you are already starting from an outcome perspective, this is a super interesting, nice, huge step. So that's a very valuable. And then if you're saying, hey, I want to increase conversion rate, but I have no idea how much I will increase it, that's totally fine. And it's fine to make an wild guess, or informed guess, at least, let's call it. Trying to come up with some number that will, of course, refine over time. So that's what I will suggest. Kind of get the practice, and as you practice, you will get better at it.
I've heard that also, indeed, that maybe the first, second quarter you will just okay, this number maybe seems right, and then you will start adapting. I don't know if maybe someone from the audience or from the call also wants to share, maybe if they have faced similar challenge or tips.
I had a question in terms of, I was just interested to know what was, I suppose, the pain that kind of drove you to say, I need to write a book about this.
Yeah, that's a good question, because there was a clear pain. The pain was, as I was saying, hey, there is no way to do it. And I would say that probably from my perspective, what happened is that I have done it many times, but the process was not so super clear in my head. And I had, and the other thing that happened on top of that is that people was asking me, hey, how to do strategy. And, I do some, coaching and mentoring here and there. So I had no very good way to tell that to people, or even say, hey, there is this resource there that you can read and you can follow. So I felt that gap, and I felt that I had something to add in that gap. So that's what's the key motivation for the book.
And where do you think most people tend to go wrong? I know you've spoken about obviously gathering insights, but in your book, you've got, I suppose, setting the strategy, then you've got the roadmap, and then you talk about objectives and key results. Maybe like with each of those sections, like where do you feel that people maybe go a little bit astray?
I think that situations might be super different from company to company, but I would say that strategy is the one I'd see people struggling the most. And of course, in strategy per se, you can go wrong in different directions. So in terms of steps, I would say strategy is usually the weakest one. And when I now digging a bit deeper into strategy, I think this initial stage between coming up with insights, which is hard, and also selecting the right ones, the ones that will drive a strategic advantage, or the ones that you can find a unique positioning or things like that. Those are the most struggling ones, because once you've done that, I think that the rest of the process follows more naturally, so to speak.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. When I've gone into companies, what's happened, they might have started with a strategy, and then over time, they just suddenly stop looking outside, and then all of a sudden it's like internally focused, and obviously the world moves, but they haven't got sort of continuous discovery practices in place, and so you go in and everything suddenly become quite tactical.
Mm-hmm. And maybe that is related to the OKR question, because what I think is very difficult. So as I was saying, I'm coaching some companies into starting with this process, and the problem is when you're doing this for the first time, not having insights or coming up and mapping your insights, it's not only hard but also time consuming. So it's not like hey, let's sit 6 people in the room and let's write our insights and that's when we are done. It's something that you need to probably go into past research, because you have insights that are not still mapped. And also you will have pieces here and there that you need to go and research further to see if there are valuable insights or not. So I think that's kind of where the whole problem starts, because, and I put that in the book, but that requires a lot of time. We are working on urgent stuff, so we are not finding that time. But by not finding that time, we are putting for ourselves on the next quarter another urgent topic instead of a strategic topic, so that we perpetuate that cycle of working on urgent stuff. And I think this is the key. If we stop and be able to do this mapping, we can then have a more ordered process, so to speak.
Yeah, maybe to zoom in on the insights, right? I think, Punti, you have a question about competitive analysis. Did you want to ask it?
Yes. I have a question and I have a comment. My comment was that, just continuing to what you were saying, I think that strategy really is a differentiator between a great and a good company. I have been part of some companies that they even have a role called product strategy manager, and that is very different from the product manager role. But what they do practically is trying to make sure that different products that these companies have, they can work together and integrate together. And they don't really look over the the strategy of, where I'm going to be in 5 years and what does it make sense for the market, for our products to go. And so that has been very, very challenging. And that puts the pressure on the product managers to come up actually with a strategy. So they do the both jobs. That was the comment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, would you like to add anything?
No, I think that's a good point, because so maybe, yeah, to add a comment on that one is that you have this, I see this situation in two different aspects. The first one is you have these companies in which leadership is stopping at the level of, yes, we want to grow into this market, which is super high level, and then doesn't give, they're trying to empower teams, but they actually given no clue to actually be empowered and decide on top of more specific or granular opportunities. And then the other one is when we are not really sure what position to take, so we're trying to kind of jump from one to another, and that's also something that, as you said, probably if you want to make a position in a longer term, you need to be very specific on kind of the approach and how you to get there. And if you are just, hey, since I'm not sure, I'm not deciding on anyone, you are just going from one point to the other and not making a positioning.
And my question was about when you are focusing on a feature as a product. Let's say that I want to develop this search capability for a product inside a company. And so running the competitive analysis for that is very difficult, because your competitors would be, okay, let's say that I have an Office similar to the Microsoft Office product, and I want to run search for it, build a search for it. Then I have to go particularly to Microsoft Office, look at what their search are doing, what are they capable of. So how do you go about doing the competitive analysis when you want to build, when you want to understand what the market is doing? Because it's not possible to go to every product and, drill down into what they're doing on that feature.
Yeah, so for sure it's a complex topic, and again, I will love to hear other experiences. An approach I like to take, and this is probably coming from the book, the Blue Ocean Strategy, and dividing the value proposition into the many different aspects, is taking that from a user perspective. So first of all, you can, so you may have many different products out there. So trying to understand which are the most relevant for the users, and that's probably very easy because you can get market share or some other proxy metric to understand which is the one that the users are selecting. And then you can even do for instance, some user interviews or some, actually not interviews, will be more like, or either user testing on the competitor's product or similar interviews are guided to the competitor's product to understand what the user value from the search capability of your competitor X. So in that way, you are not making wild guesses of what's valuable, or you're not making wild guesses, okay, this search is better than this one because they have this crazy feature. You are actually seeing from the user perspective what is what they value inside search. So I think that's not only a nice way to kind of make the complex or make the problem a bit less complex, but also making it from a perspective that will let you afterwards decide on, okay, this is super important, or even I can differentiate from this product because I see that the users are using this competitor product in a way that is not super satisfying their needs. So there is something to build there. So it gives you some extra learnings to make better decisions in terms of strategy, at least.
Yeah. And I think also that the other maybe benefit of doing it from the user point of view is that then probably you will sometimes find that besides checking the competitor, you should also see how the expectation is with like more in general, right? Like what I'm thinking now is, for example, search, the people that was doing it at Booking, for example. Of course, the competitor was, let's say, Expedia, right? And then you could just see, okay, you can search there by date, for example, right? But then what we would see is that people search related more to Google. So then they were trying, or they were expecting to be able to search in the same way, right? And Google, I mean, well, now you can say it's a competitor with Google Travel, right? But before it was also like, if you would just look into the competitors and not that much from the user point of view, probably you would never see that angle, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Actually, yeah, that, we know we actually are, again, probably that's, as you said, this is the user view, because we are too focused on our product that we are too biased to look into our competitors, but the users are actually taking other paradigms, other mental models.
Yeah, and another challenge I think I've seen when we were talking about the insights, right? Besides that it takes time and so on, another different set of challenge I've seen is also teams. I don't know if company, but teams also thinking that well, we already know them, right? So why would we even take the time to write them down and to like ask even sometimes, right? I think sometimes some teams and people have been so long in a team already that it's very easy sometimes to get this feeling that, well, we already know them, right? And we all more or less know because we have all interviewed someone at a certain point. So then but I think doing this exercise of all, well, getting together or at a certain point having this all written down, and then also I think what you mentioned, right, then decide which of all these universe of insights are the ones more relevant, still is super valuable, right? Even if everyone feels like, oh, we already know all these things.
Yeah, and in that sense, I really like, for instance, tools like the Opportunity Solution Tree by Ter Torres, which was explained it here not too long ago, because what I usually see is that, we tend to get in love with our ideas, and especially when they're doing strategy, you convince yourself, because it's sort of an abstract exercise still, so you can convince yourself that this is the right approach to take. So the mapping your opportunity space with an opportunity solution tree. So I'm not talking about solution part, I'm talking about the top part. I think it's super valuable to kind of being able to not only see what you already know, but also come up with other opportunities that you may not be looking before making a decision. So I think that those sort of tools are super interesting. And then going back to one thing I really like about making a systematic approach to strategy is that if you are really stating your strategic assumptions, even though you say like this, hey, we're convinced this is true, okay, but let's write the assumption we are pursuing, let's experiment on that. So you will really quickly, or you can really quickly realize if you are pursuing the right thing or not. Because if not, if you're not stating that assumption and you are not testing upon it, you may end up working 12 months or even more in something that's not valuable at the end.
Yeah, definitely. I see there's another question from the page. As marketplaces have different personas with different, sometimes conflicting interests. In your opinion, what is the best way to set up KPIs, outcomes? And should we even have different roadmaps maybe for each segment?
And so I'm actually currently working in a marketplace, and I will argue that travel also was some sort of marketplace because, of course, you need to integrate providers to sell products to customers. So I have been in that field. So in terms of, I will answer in two different levels. What you need to have in order to steer the product into the same direction is some way of understanding what is the shared goal. Because for sure, you can say, we're more focused on the customer, but in order to focus on the customer, we need to be serving our suppliers to have a good product to serve our customers. So at the end, that's something in there that can be, number of transactions, can be revenues, can be conversion, whatever. But that sort of goal should be aligned on both sides. Because at the end, let's use the example of conversion, which is quite easy. If you are saying, I'm focusing on conversion because I want to do nice things for the user in terms of features. But in order to deliver those features, you probably need to, for instance, I want to have a better description of my product. Okay, you need to ask your supplier to have a description. And so this is a cycle that you always need to be considering. So the metric you choose need to be serving both sides. So that's in terms of aligning on a goal, and that goal should be on top of kind of the strategy. Then I guess that the question was around having different roadmaps. So I do think that the opportunity spaces tend to be different. So as the question said, there are two different personas, and those two different personas have different needs. So when we're exploring opportunities, those opportunities or those problems to solve might be very different. But still there is a connection. So this is the risk when we're saying if there are two super separate teams not working close together, the problem is if I want to pursue an opportunity on the consumer side that needs something done by the supplier side in order to achieve it, then if you are not aligned, you are kind of missing that opportunity. So what I'm trying to say in essence is that those two need to be aligned. So the strategy needs to be a single strategy that cascades. And of course, when you go to different sides of the product, you may have different opportunities, but you are coming from the same positioning that you want to build. So maybe I can give a more concrete example. At the state, for instance, my last company, when we were talking in travel, we were the biggest Mexican travel company, really focused on the Mexican Caribbean destinations. So I want to say, hey, we want to build a differentiation in terms of content for all star hotels. Very, very big chunk of our revenues in Cancun, those areas that are very centered on these all-star hotels. But of course, in order to bring up that content, we had tools in the, let's say, on our C side or at our reach, which were having content editors and things like that they can really add some flavor to what we're doing. But for sure, we needed some descriptions enhancements on the supply side. So in that sense, that was the strategy. So that was, or actually not the strategy, the positioning, the focus. And then we have things all over the place. So for instance, we have things from the product perspective on the C side, let's call it. On the supplier side, we also had some opportunities to improve the information we are giving to those hotels. For instance, we'll say, hey, you are having a bad conversion compared to other competitors, and you are lacking this and these features in your description page. So that's how we align on the same opportunity, on the same strategic initiative from a very different angles of the marketplace. And finally, even furthermore, the strategy also involved the commercial team, because there was a commercial team doing the deals with the hotels. So yeah, we are focusing on you, so we can do this and these arrangements. So there's a commercial aspect to the strategy as well. So I'm not sure if I answered the question, but basically there's need to be a top level strategy, a top level positioning that we are sure that we are aligned, and then we can divide some opportunities on both sides.
Are there also any other questions or maybe comments related to I think these like different personas or marketplace and then KPIs and content metrics is very interesting one. I don't know if there's someone wants to add something maybe, or like a follow-up question.
Hey, well, this is Scott from Pasadena in the United States. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, Scott.
Oh, excellent. Cool. I'm on my backup internet, so I'm not even trying video right now. So I wanted to make a comment about the personas, because that's a very popular concept, especially in the design community, but coming at it from sort of a strategy perspective, and especially if you use a tool like Jobs to be Done, the lesson there is that if you have a very demographic focused persona as opposed to a benefits and sort of jobs and outcomes focused persona, it can be very misleading. And so you end up chasing people. All right, there you go. Good on you, Tim. So you end up chasing basically ghost customers, right? You know a lot about them, what's their favorite color and what name is their dog, right? But in terms of how much are they willing to pay for specific things, and especially where are the gaps in their outcomes, right? So like what's really important and where's their dissatisfaction? If you're not really zeroed in on that, you can really be led astray. So you can do a lot of really good design work and a lot of iterations, but you don't actually produce sales.
Yeah, I think on my side, I can say that there are different uses for personas. So I agree that maybe on more discovery-oriented activities or implementation-oriented activities may be more helpful. On a strategy, I think that the strategy can have different flavors. So for instance, if you are trying to expand to new personas, so let's say that I have a product that solves some jobs to be done, but it's being used by, older population, I want to target younger population, then understanding a bit more of that audience and how we can change our product to position for that audience is important. But also, as you said, I think that it's not only understanding, hey, what's their favorite color, it's understanding more of, okay, what's the need they have and what is the need that my product is still not solving to actually conquer that segment of the market. So as I said, maybe it's similar to what you said. I think there is a use there for segments, but it needs to be in terms of this expansion. And then when you are analyzing a segment, it's not just coming up with persona, it's understanding more of the background and what's the barrier then to enter to that market.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just to rephrase, it's personas, there may be a number of different personas in a segment. And I think that's often where things get lost. Because especially, when you talk to like UX designers, they just think in terms of personas and sort of as the product manager, you've got to connect, number of members of this persona to a market. And designers don't think that way. And yet as sort of product people and, as you go up the ladder, you really do have to think about that, right? Because if you've got a great persona, but they represent, 0.01% of potential customers, that's not a good business decision.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's also something similar that I see sometimes when people talk about roadmaps, right? And then if you understand roadmap more as a list of features, then it doesn't work. But if you understand roadmap more like as well, right? What outcome I want to focus first and then second, then so I think with personas is sometimes the same, right? Unless it's very clear what exactly that the team means when using personas, it can go all over the place, I think.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. I mean, the other thing that's really important is to be very upfront about your assumptions, and to do a lot of fast and cheap tests around that. And a lot of people have written about that for decades, but it still isn't common practice. So that's another thing that I think is really good to focus on. Very helpful and simple, right? You don't need lots of fancy Harvard MBAs to do that.
Definitely. Nice.
Or London School of Economics.
Yeah, indeed, closer to us. All right, we have also another question or comment for Diana. Do you want to make it yourself?
Of course. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
No worries.
So I'm actually curious because I've been through a couple of different product manager roles, both in technology companies and software, and I'm actually curious if you've seen a difference in the way the product management or product direction is working with sales results. And what I mean by that is one of the companies I was in, as a product manager, I was actually directly responsible of the P&L, which meant that it was somehow my responsibility to be close to the market all the time and make sure that my product is relevant on a regular basis. That's not the case everywhere. And that's not the case, for example, in the company I'm in now, which makes it that it seems like the product teams are a bit farther down from what they're trying to achieve with their product, and they're sometimes running after either ghost personas, as Scott very, very well pointed out, but also after things that don't necessarily make a difference and move the needle a lot in terms of sales. So it might be that it's a feature that's really cool, but it's not going to sell more of or move your product into that. So I'm just curious a little bit to hear about your experience with that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel that I would say that the target population for product direction, now that we're talking about it this way, is more focused on companies that are trying to be more, let's say, call it product led. So because companies more, let's call it sales led, a lot of challenges beyond strategy, I will argue. For instance, discovery and things like that are also problematic, kind of designing on behalf of what the customer X wants. So those are kind of the problems I see out there. One thing that I suggest in these cases, and again, this is maybe company by company, so it's very particular to each scenario, is trying to go through the opposite path. So we're trying to say, we have a direction. From the direction we start our discovery problems, and then we implement. But if we are coming from solutions, let's try to go the other way around and find what is the direction that solution will bring us. So if we pursue this solution, what will actually be our final positioning? What does that mean for the market we are trying to capture? What does this mean for the differentiation we are making from other competitors? So in that sense, you may, not say case by case, you may shift the conversation from let's build this or don't build it to, hey, if we pursue this path, we will end up here. Do we want to end up there? That's fine, or not. Then we discuss. And that's even interesting because you can decide that for sure we have always less resources that we want in any company, sales-driven or not sales-driven. So I'm sure that you are having many sales representatives having different customer requests. So maybe the discussion of if this feature more valuable than this other, that is mostly opinionated and based on who screams higher or the highest paid person opinion, you can shift the conversation to, okay, if we want to achieve this positioning, then this set of customers or opportunities or solutions you are presenting are more reasonable to this positioning. So you kind of shift the conversation, if that makes sense.
That's a very interesting point, kind of way to look at it. I didn't think about that. Thanks.
Nice. I think, Tim, you also had a question?
Yeah, thanks. I want to dig in the roadmap part. I really like that chapter. And my question would be the differentiation between project roadmaps, so these Gantt charts we all know, versus the product roadmaps. How would you convince companies, or how would you argue to switch this, let's call it the mindset, difficult word, but this usage of project roadmaps going to more product roadmaps?
Yeah. So essentially what I'm seeing, I'm seeing more acceptance lately, so I think it's a good sign. So the way to frame it that I think worked in the past is, if we are making a project-oriented roadmap, we cannot commit to the results. We can commit to the deliveries. And what you actually want, stakeholder X who is acting for the roadmap, you want the outcomes. You don't want the results. So somehow we can commit to the results and gain some, and we will tell you what opportunities or what problems we're solving, but we will find the specific solution based on what makes more impact on the results. So that's a line of argument. It's a bit high level how I'm explaining, and it requires a bit of fighting in between. But one thing that also has worked in the past is show how often the product roadmap fails, because the project roadmap fails. When you put it in terms of your typical Gantt chart, you can do that. Let's say that you come up with the product roadmap, and it's a strategic roadmap based on opportunities, not on solutions. And you're saying, hey, this is the roadmap for our next year. And say, oh no, we want something more detailed. We want solutions. Say, okay, I will give you the project roadmap for the next quarter. You will see how that will fail. So
and one question in advance, as you work for a German-based company, and I'm from Germany as well, and we are so how did that work out with this German-based company? Perhaps you have some experience with that.
I would actually say that Xing is a very particular company, and maybe a bit of background, maybe also a bit of why I choose to work at Xing. Has a very strong product community, almost 60 people, and has been working with product management for probably almost 10 years now. So it's I would say the stakeholders and management are quite used to these conversations. So I am a bit lucky in that sense. But for instance, I don't want to blame anyone or not point fingers at any company, but I have a friend working at Zalando who had this pain of paying this kind of 2 years roadmap based on projects. So at some point, I think there is a trade-off. And as I was saying, a company may decide that they want to be project-driven and maybe, I don't know, as Marty Kagan's put it, maybe that's time to find another company. But I still think that there are opportunities for having this discussion in which you're saying, if we are having this underlying project roadmap, let's put a product roadmap on top to see what outcomes we're trying to pursue. And what you can show afterwards, and this is where I was going with this Q1 example, is that the project roadmap usually fails because when you are actually executing, at some point you will have that discussion. Should we pursue the project roadmap and not deliver on the outcome? So I will give you this feature, but we know this feature will not make an impact. Or we stick with the outcome, so we switch the project roadmap in order to put there or to build what actually will hit our outcomes. And I think that's the discussion that served me the most. So as I said, different stakeholders, different companies, maybe different conversations, but framing the conversation from that perspective. So if you want the project roadmap, okay, I will do it. Let's try to do the least efforts possible. So try to manage to go through it without much pain, and then use it to show how it didn't work as a good tool for communication, because roadmap is mostly for communication with stakeholders, and in that way, I found some opportunities to kind of change the mindset. I'm curious to learn anyway other experiences, because this is something that probably many of us faced.
Yeah.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hey Carlos, hey Nacho, congrats for the book again. I read the book already a couple of months ago. I found it to be an amazing tool as well, like a very good collection of tools. So hats off for the work you did, Nacho. I also wanted to build on what Diana said, more of as a comment related to this kind of two type of organizations, at least one which is more sales driven, and the other one which is more output driven, and just creating roadmap with more like a project management approach. And I think it's interesting to talk about why they are in certain side of the scale or on the other. And one of the things I have realized is incentives, for instance, play a big role. Mostly, for instance, when we talk about sales-driven organizations, right? I happen to work in my past life at Booking.com, right, and working with a commercial organization, and you saw that even though many of the reasons that we provided were made sense, and then we also kind of double check with many other people in the organization, then the incentives to move in certain direction didn't allow the sales organization to understand it, right? Because we could tell that you need to prioritize, you need to help us building this product more in the long run, not for selling to your specific customer or to a specific client, but if there is a bonus in between, then that blinds your understanding. And I think that's something to also put on the table many times as a product manager, not only kind of getting in the discussion of shall we build this tool or not, it's also how are you being incentivized, and how could we then help the organization to provide the right incentives to move in certain direction. And that's another factor which is related to the maturity. I guess when you're just starting a product, there is some space probably of weeks time where you need to aim for output before you aim for outcomes. That should be very clearly specified and very kind of limited, so that it doesn't become the new norm, but it's also something to define. And I have a question for the group, Nacho, or anyone who have an idea about it, related to another factor that I saw would make certain product organizations function in some way or another, which is the type of product. So at Booking.com, for instance, we have the product, which was a hotel, which was mostly a commodity. So in general, as an organization, we could make decisions very easily because where we knew that if a customer will go to a 4-star hotel in Amsterdam, it didn't matter too much if it was the one in this street on the other street. But then I moved to an organization which was working in events, and it does matter whether you're going to a concert by Beyonce, I don't know, or by some kind of unknown artist, in which case the product is not commoditized anymore. And many times these big items, such as the Beyonce's, etc., they will have a bigger kind of a negotiation hand, and that could also blend the principles you have established as a product organization, right? Because if it's either we develop so that Beyonce is in our platform, or Beyonce is not in our platform, and therefore we need to at times, or we're required to work as an agency. But I resist to believe that's the case. What do you think, Nacho? Do I make any sense?
Yeah, I think that there's one interesting thought that arises from what you are saying, is that it's not only sales driven, not sales driven. It's also kind of the short-term incentive versus long-term incentive, and that's as your example, it can be a B2C company, very short-time incentivized. So for sure, there is a moment in time in which you need to survive, for instance, in which you are not probably very strategic, and you're trying to say, we need Beyonce because we need to earn that money in order to be able to build the next thing. So I think that those compromises to our principles or to our strategy even, I think in those situations are a no-brainer, so to speak. Then the problem is when we are, so what is the problem with that? That you can perpetuate that behavior, because if you are not building any differentiation, you are not making any positioning, and you are not building a base of customers that you can rely upon to grow your business, then you are jumping from one, let's say, one star to the other in order to make a living. So that's an agency, as you said. So yeah, I'm sure that there is some room for this flexibility, but you should be more, or you should be conscious of where you are getting into. And I think those discussions are particularly difficult maybe in a startup, or things that actually you are trying to build your position from the first time, different from a company, maybe going back to the sales-driven example, in which you have a product, the product has a market fit, has a base of customers, and then you are adding feature X because this company asked for it. So I think that they're totally different discussions. But as you said, the incentives, if you are sales-driven and you're trying to make a sales quota, and you are constantly prioritizing that objectives on top of your strategic objectives, it's very hard to, on top of long-term incentives or long-term customer-based development, it's very hard to build a strategy.
Yeah, I think also there the underlying challenge that I think is probably not only product related, right? But I think what Sebastian, you mentioned, right? This misalignment on goals between teams or departments, right? That I think as a company grows, it's easier that they happen, and then they will have a bigger impact as well, right? Because sometimes indeed the discussion is not that much about project roadmap against a product roadmap, but it's more that, like Sebastian said, right? Someone has incentive to get this ad on time, and that's it. But you just want to deliver the best product, right? So two people try to achieve something different and trying to coordinate on something that is not the same, right? So won't happen.
Yeah, actually, I believe maybe this goes back to the marketplace example. It's easy to have silos for two different sides of the marketplace in the entire organization. I think we as product people, we have a higher responsibility for bringing those worlds together, because for sure, as we were discussing before, if you are trying to deliver on a unified experience and you're trying to make any sort of silos you might have in the organization work in a coherent way and pursue the same objectives, I think we have the responsibility, but we also have the tools to do it, because we run the product at the end of the day. So yeah, it's an interesting. I saw also in travel companies in which you have silos per vertical, so flights, hotels, car rental, etc. And at the end of the day, the user needs to see a unified experience. So it's quite interesting. And you are trying to solve for the best trip the user can have. So the trip involves many products, even though maybe the commercial organizations have different incentives.
Yeah. Indeed, I think a good way of approaching. I think you also mentioned in the book at the beginning, right? You should always start with like, you basically should forget your team and then start with like, okay, the company, what does it want to achieve, and then see how that cascades into all different teams, right? Because sometimes if you start from the other side, then it's very difficult to find where the things start being having this misconnection, right? Or different ambitions.
And that's a super interesting challenge for, I'm not sure what roles you have, but from a product leader perspective, that's also interesting because you are trying to incentivize your PMs to be strategic and think about strategy, but it's easy, it may be easier for them to think about their part of the product or their vertical or however you want to call it. And then when they are bringing those strategies, you need to come up with a way to make a synergy, and for sure that would mean saying no to things. But of course, you need to have that role of unifying stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, what is interesting as well is that, as you guys said, in general, when it comes to strategy, to incentives, that's rather the small print, right? But it's not something that you typically declare openly. Because if you go to the vision of a department, at least that was my experience, we were all aligned there. And whenever we said, yeah, we are striving to help our customers, yes, all together, and everyone said amen. But then when it came to operationalizing that, I came to that realization while working on it, right? Like saying, okay, so this person, like the story that we are having here, I see no flaw, and yet this person is not able to buy it, and I don't understand why. And then kind of trying to investigate on this, I also came to this quote, like the best way to forecast or to predict the behavior of someone is to look at the way they are incentivized, right? And many times, this is not exposed. This is not like kind of a public information. And that's why sometimes when it comes to also, I think someone mentioned on how to convince the rest of people to work in certain way. It's also trying to understand what they need. And sometimes that's not written anywhere.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the points why I wanted to be super specific from following this path from strategy, because you mentioned vision, but also on strategy, we can say, hey, yeah, we love the strategy. And then when you go to execution, it fails. So it's very important to kind of be connecting the points. No? And for instance, Martin Ericsson has this decision stack process in which he says, okay, yes, the vision gives us room for the strategy and for the objectives and for the opportunities. And all those steps, you're saying what you are not doing. So yeah, I mean, it's probably related to the same, but yeah, I wanted to make those connections very clear and make clear what we are not, or what we're actually doing and what not doing.
Yeah. Any someone else wants to any questions or comments maybe from the call? I think we also had one more from the page. So what do you recommend for companies that working on creating the company vision, right? Because I think, yeah, of course, on the book starts straight from strategy, and I think it is mentioned, of course, right, that you're assuming that there is a vision, but yeah, maybe what suggestions are there?
Yeah, actually, it's a good point, because when I start, I actually at some point make a conscious decision of starting with the strategy, because it was kind of big topic, and also I would say probably there are people who, maybe Marty Kagan, for instance, can speak about strategy vision much better. The approach I do really like for product organizations or product teams is the storyboard, and also something that I picked from Martin. Why? Because you can have a vision that, I mean, a typical vision, not a vision statement, but a typical vision in which you say, hey, this is the future I want to build. It may be harder to make it tangible for teams and making, let's call it actionable for teams. When you come to a storyboard, usually the way I like to frame it is, okay, this is the world of the user before our we achieve our vision, before the product achieves vision, and this is the product or the word of the user afterwards, and kind of frames showing that story. So in that way, it's you're highlighting the pains, again, the positioning you want to make. So that's why I like the storyboard. How to come up with the storyboard, that may be another book, and I'm probably not the right one to write it. But yeah, I guess it starts with this conscious decision of we are trying to focus on this type of problem, and we want to be the best in this type of way, and making that some sort of claim in storyboard.
Yeah, indeed. I found that the storyboard also helps to abstract a bit more from whatever the existing product is, right? Or like, I don't know, think of features and so on, right? It pushes you to like, okay, let's not talk about screens, but how do we want the experience, the feeling to be at the end, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also another thing I find interesting about the storyboard is that I feel it scales nicely in terms of you can have a storyboard for, let's say it's a bigger company, you can have a storyboard for the company or the whole product experience, which is a bit more abstract, a bit more higher level. But then going back to teams, the teams can create storyboards for their own product vision, so to speak, or maybe not a team, but a unit, a cluster, however you call it. But yeah, you can have this combination at different levels and still scales well.
Yeah, indeed. Cool. And checking the time, are there any final questions or comments?
From my side, just first of all, thanks to you guys, Carlos and Nacho, for organizing and for the book. Just to say that strategy, where I having done product for almost 10 years, I came to the realization of what strategy was a couple of years ago only, probably 5 years ago or something. So it took a solid 5 years to understand it, and thanks to your book, it was a very kind of a cooking recipe to make that happen. And it's funny because for strategies in general, a very big word that appears in Harvard Business Review, and everyone thinks it's a 10 or 100 pages document. And thank you for landing it to us. And yeah, that's from my side.
Thank you.
Nice. Yeah, indeed. I agree. I think that the book is a very nice, summary of all these things that talk about tools and how to do it, and without losing that detail, as I mentioned, right? And when I read the advice for even how to word it, I was like, wow, man, it's amazing that the book is still not like a whole Bible, but it still is able to provide this level of detail. So I agree. Just maybe we can do now the pictures, so the people that have the book at hand, or also if you just want to appear on the picture, you can turn on your camera.
Oh, nice to see you.
Nice. All right. So I will take a screenshot. 3, 2, 1. Nice. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Nacho, very much for joining and for all the discussion. Hope you enjoyed it. And thanks everyone again. I'll see you next month.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Product Book Club is completely free for all participants and authors. It's running by enthusiasts, and we have great plans how to develop it further. If you like what we are doing, you can support us on Patreon or using one-off donations. Check out more details on productbookclub.com/support or in the details section under this video. Thanks!